from the ancient time to the creative of work that is done by Kang Zhengsan. And after his work, he called the time of present is the data world. So I read these pages from the sixth line. According to the prior word cited above, it refers to the present world of ours. The history of all human beings, including all beings in the universe, is identical with that of the prior world. According to Sangye Kang, up to the end of the 19th century, the world was considered the prior world, which was full of negative things, such as mutual conflicts or contradictions among peoples, nations, and myriad things in the universe. This period of time was indeed filled with histories of wars, destructions, disease, hunger, and poverty, on account of which people were unhappy and miserable. Likewise, even in the natural world, the principle of survival of the fittest prevailed. On the whole, the worlds of both man and nature were dictated by the old rule of mutual conflicts or contradictions. As a result, only the strongest and most superior humans and animals managed to survive. As long as the brutal rule prevails in the world, there is no hope for peace and happiness to be realized. In view of this historical development, Sangye Kang felt that it is essential to remedy ills of human society and natural world. To do this task, he believed it's equally important to come up with the radical treatment methods to resolve all the problems that are found in our society and natural world as well. He boldly proposed the idea of Sangseng, mutual beneficence of all life, with which to replace Sangguk, mutual conflict or contradictions. We can see that this word is divided into principles. The prior word is ruled by the principle of Sangguk, mutual conflict or mutual integrity, and the later word is ruled by the mutual beneficence of all life. Yeah. So he boldly proposed the idea of Sangseng, with which to replace Sangguk. This also means that you have to undertake an unprecedented task that was known as the reordering of the universe. Yeah, this is Cheonji Gongsa. Cheonji Gongsa. You can call this work as the creative, great work of Sangye Kang, by which he intended to eradicate ills or grievances caused by mutual conflicts or contradictions. By reordering the structures of our society and world, he believed he could eradicate all the problems, taking advantage of his God-given spiritual power and wisdom he happened to have as the laws of the ninth heaven. Simply put, the term Sangseng means that one must think of the interests or benefits of other people first, before our own. In the process of adhering themselves to the principle of Sangseng, both parties quickly learn the lesson that they both can benefit themselves by enabling them to prosper and live happily at the same time. Though it may sound like paradoxical or contradictory, we see no reason why one cannot understand the true meaning of Sangseng. In other words, if the idea of Sangseng is real and true, everybody will be benefited, regardless of benefactor or receiver. Both parties will be benefited equally from what they have done. Coexistence alone can bring about peace and harmony in human and natural worlds. Without the principle of coexistence or cooperation in human and natural worlds, there will be no law and order but chaos and disaster in the future. In sum, the idea of Sangseng can be taken as a new guiding principle aimed at creating new order in the later world. To put into effect this very idea, the first and the foremost task for us to do at this point in time is to resolve all the grievances prevalent in human and natural worlds. The next part, I will explain about the main concept of this Dasun thought, that is the characteristic of Dasun Julie. Chapter 3, in search of a new paradigm from the Dasun thought. I compromise this part to two parts. The one is humanism you visited. This humanism is that puts man above heaven and earth. This is very important, I think. We can see this content from the page number 90. I will read this part from the seventh line. In comparison and or contrast to the Western and Asian efforts, the Dasun truth has taken somewhat different approaches in search of the essence of man and nature. According to the idea of the resolution of grievances, one, humans are bound to have grievances and suffer from them because they are innately endowed with insatiable appetite or greed for everything that we see or sense in this world. Thus, they continue to accumulate human grievances in the course of time. When they reach a saturation point, they were bound to explode often in a very negative and destructive fashion, that is, in the form of wars and disturbances among them in the course of their history. But at the same time, humans can also alter their negative actions into something positive or constructive when and if they so desire. In other words, they can dictate their own course of action, although they depend on some other factors involved. As long as they desire to make a decision for action and carry it out in accordance with their wills, it will be possible to reverse any course of their action. If this is the case, theoretically, it is possible that humans can find out their own identity and translate it into reality by taking advantage of their knowledge and ability to the full. At this point, let us put the supreme scriptures, it's Jeongyong, it's the scripture of this Dasun to this effect. First, Sang Kang said to his disciple Hong Wu that now that we have arrived at the time for the resolution of grievances, one, we humans, regardless of male or female, can release ourselves from the fetters of grievances so as to resolve them once and for all. The first utmost task for us to do is to reorder law of the universe so as to restore or establish good order manners and etiquette. Second, he also said that as the age of the resolution of grievances comes true, those with law or statutes or prestige can and will have power and wealth in the forthcoming world. Likewise, when that world becomes a reality, abandoned or useless lands can be converted into fertile and productive ones. That is both vitality and productivity will return to make lands fertile more than ever. Third, he stresses the most important point that now is the time for us to take action to respect our value and so that it can be more important than heaven and earth, thereby enabling himself to make efforts for realization of the forthcoming ideal world in the age of respect for men. Okay, this is main contents of the new humanism revisited in Desmond Dodd. And the other characteristic of Desmond Dodd is the worldview that stresses dynamic and organic functions. I need your patience. So this part is a worldview that stresses dynamic and organic functions. There are some dynamic and organic characteristics involved in the concept of the resolution of grievances for the mutual beneficence of all life. In actuality, the term heaven 상생 consists of two separate words, but often the two words can be interpreted as one and the same. The first term, heaven, is a concept that is identified with a potential element or ability with which to make it possible to implement one's self-realization in actual life, whereas the term 상생 cannot function independently in and of itself because without heaven, there is no role to be played by 상생, nor is there any room left for it at all in developing or making each other's relationship. In other words, even the very existence of 상생 cannot be justified without making relations or connections with heaven. This dynamic and organic nature of 상생 provides a good starting point to develop the theory of 상생 in relations to heaven in hope of developing some sort of universally valid theory of solving the problems of interpersonal or international relations. The theory of 상생 is justifiable on the ground that humans cannot live or survive without relations to the following: personally, family members; socially, friends, colleagues, superiors, and subordinates; racially, blacks, whites, and browns; ecologically, nature and environment; religiously, gods and fellow men and women. Without exception, people are not happy unless and until all those needs will be met. The Desmond Truth intends to resolve all relational problems in terms of the concept of heaven 상생 that stands for the value of interrelations in making peace, harmony, cooperation, and coexistence among all beings, including people and nations in the world. Fritjof Capra once remarked that new thoughts and new value are interrelated to each other. What is meant by this statement is that when there is a new thought, there is always change in the value system from old to new one. To be more specific, mutual conflicts or contradictions can change itself into mutual cooperation or coexistence. Similarly, one-sided self-assertion can be changed into mutual consensus, thus reducing emotional diatribes to rational needs in human behaviors. In the final analysis, the mode of human thinking will be moving eventually from linear to non-linear direction. That is, from one side is self-assertion to mutually harmonious coexistence and cooperation, from oppression or domination to freedom or coexistence. This concept can be applied also to politics and economy. For example, the powerful and the weak in the government and the rich and the poor in the economy can actually live and work together for the sake of harmony and balance without conflict and confrontation. Although they are different in terms of the share of power and wealth in our human society. Two different elements complement and supplement one another by promoting the ideas of mutual cooperation, not mutual competition, thus ultimately creating a tolerant, harmonious, and positive world in the future. This idea, we believe, can be applied even to the Korean society, where there are numerous divisions and conflicts. For instance, between government and opposition parties, between religions, between ideologies, between haves and have-nots, and the like. The same can be said about relations between man and environment. In the name of progress and prosperity, massive destruction of natural environment is going on, especially in advanced the Western world. To reverse this trend, one must introduce Asia's nature-friendly philosophy. One has realized the fact that without preservation of good environment, all species, including both humans and animals, will disappear from the earth in the not too distant future. Last but not least, the same things should be said about religions, since there is no exceptions to the rule. Each and every religion in this world has had a long history. Contrary to their lofty ideas that stress peace and prosperity, however, all religions have contributed more to war and destruction, thus killing more than half of all lives who have lost throughout human history. Ironically enough, to this day, this trend still persists, creating all sort of conflicts or clashes between the religions throughout the world. The only solution for this phenomenon can come from constant dialogue based on the spirit of mutual cooperation or toleration towards all religions of the world. The world in which we live today is the age of cultural pluralism, so that we must change our traditional way of thinking to resolve all these critical issues by introducing a new paradigm to implement the Daesun idea that stresses mutual coexistence or cooperation for the benefit of all beings in the world. Okay, I will tell you the concluding remarks. It's very tired to me to read this paper. In this above, we have tried to elucidate the most important ideas of the Daesun truth in terms of the resolution of grievances for the mutual beneficence of all life. Although it has a short history in Korea, the Daesun Truth Society has operated its organizations by making or practicing the rules and regulations based on the above ideas, so as to change the Korean people and society alike. If this new paradigm does work in Korea, we believe it will and can work for the rest of the world. For this novel purpose, the Daesun Truth Society has taken the initiative to promote this new idea in Korea first, to transform our old static way of thinking for the betterment of all beings in the world. Thank you so much.
like to start with a couple of comments that a couple other people have made. And first is that I'm speaking to you as an outsider. I'm not Korean. I'm Western. So I'm speaking as a Western person. And the first point I want to make is that I have no issue with the content of Daezoon Jinriway as Lee has presented it. In fact, I'm ready to sign up. I think what he's saying is good. What I'd like to do in this response paper is to raise some questions about the sense in which Daezoon Jinriway, as presented by Lee in his paper, should be called a new paradigm. My position is one of puzzlement about why this is being called a new paradigm. So again, I'm not questioning the content of what Lee has said. I'm questioning this designation of this movement as a new paradigm, and that's what I want to talk about. I will suggest three possible interpretations or causes of my puzzlement. Two of them are clarificatory and not directed at the substance of Daezoon Jinriway, and one is more challenging and critical. The first and simplest possibility for confusion surrounding the use of the new paradigm for Daezoon Jinriway, which I'm very aware of since I've assisted Lee with some of his translations, is that the newness or uniqueness of this paradigm has not yet been expressed clearly in English. Translating abstract religious thought between languages is very difficult, and when there is an Eastern-Western philosophical and cultural divide, in addition to entirely different character sets, the difficulty is compounded several times. So one possible answer to my question, what is new about this new paradigm, is that the newness simply hasn't been adequately expressed in English yet. I fully accept that this is a possibility for my puzzlement. The second possible approach to interpreting Daezoon Jinriway as a new paradigm comes from a Taoist interpretation of religion. The Tao Te Ching says, even divination and such are but the flowery trappings of the Tao. My interpretation of this and other Taoist claims is that particular religions in the world are attempts by humans to express their experience of transcendent reality. Such expressions must take on the thought, language, and cultural forms of the people expressing them. Since the thought, language, and cultural forms of different peoples are different, it follows that cultural and linguistic expressions of experiences of transcendent reality will appear different from each other. In addition, the expression of an experience of transcendent reality in the forms of one people may not be meaningful to another people. In support of this interpretation are Lee's comments in his paper that at the time of the founding of Daezoon Jinriway, none of the traditional religions, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, or Christianity, were having an impact on Korean religious life. It is possible that Daezoon thought represents the expression of fundamental religious truths in the language and forms of the Korean people, which would make it, in one sense, a new expression. My only comment in this case would be that calling Daezoon Jinriway a Korean paradigm might be more applicable than calling it a new paradigm. My final challenge to the phrase a new paradigm is philosophical and more substantive. It is that I do not find anything in Daezoon thought, as presented by Lee here, that is new. The concept that the world, whether the human world or the natural world, is characterized by grievances is a part of all religions. Similarly, the concept that the transcendent reality enters the world through incarnation or prophetic utterance to try to redress the grievances of the world is a part of all religions. Let me quote just one paragraph from Lee's paper. Under such circumstances, the resolution of grievances emerged in an effort to remove wars and tragedies. But human grievances increased by leaps and bounds, thereby culminating in the forms of war and anger. And furthermore, there was no possibility to bring about peace and prosperity to create a better world. In order to realize the new world, it is essential for us to put into effect the Daezoon truth, or the resolution of grievances. Without implementing the Daezoon truth, nothing can change our world for the better or worse. In other words, until and unless the Daezoon truth is implemented, there is no hope for us to live in such a world. This is considered as the essence of Daezoon truth. My claim is that there is nothing new in this paradigm. In fact, we could replace Daezoon truth throughout this paragraph with phrases like God's love, Allah's will, or even the rule of the majority or democracy. And the paragraph would equally describe any religion or utopian political system. In this sense, Daezoon Jinriway, as presented here, to me, just isn't a new paradigm. To conclude, there are three possible interpretations of the confusion I note about the designation of Daezoon Jinriway as a new paradigm. The least hopeful, and I admit hopefully mistaken, interpretation is that it isn't a new paradigm. The other two more hopeful possibilities are that the newness has not yet been captured by the difficult translation process from Korean to English, or that the newness of Daejeon Jinriwe is a newness of expression of ancient religious truths in modern Korean forms. I look forward to hearing more from Lee in the future about Daejeon Jinriwe. Thank you.
교수님이부터 하게 질문 받겠습니다.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah, sorry, my voice is too weak, so it's very different to speak loudly. Yeah. He's my good friend because he has several comments to improve my paper, and also I think his comment is very good, and also he persisted the standpoint of his paper. Partially, I agree with his opinion, but I have some problems to express my meaning in English because my English is not good to express all of the meaning in this Daejeon thought. But if I try to explain or answer about Dr. Kahn's the comment, I can say to him that the main point of Daejeon thought is the new paradigm. But I'm wondering that the term new is correct or not. But the topic of this conference is the new, right? So new religious movement is paradigm shift, right? I like this paradigm shift because so I named my paper as new paradigm. So I tried to explain the term of new in Daejeon thought. I can explain the 2 points. What is new in Daejeon thought? So one point is the new humanism. I'm wondering if this new humanism is correct or not, but I can say that this new humanism is emphasizing the human's mind. So I can say that there's 2 kinds of religions. I have said that there's 2 points of the world. The one is the prior world and the other is the later world. So we can say that the conventional religion is the prior world religion. And then I can say this Daejeon thought is the later world religion. What is the characteristic of the prior world religion? They emphasize the outside of the human. It's not of human's mind. But I can say the later world religion is the inside of human. Inside of human. They so emphasize the inside of human. Because this human's mind is harmonized all of the religions in the world, and then most of people belong to all kinds of religion can meet each other with this mind. So I can say this Daejeon thought is the religion of the later world religion and emphasizing the human's mind. And so I can say the new characteristic of Daejeon thought is the inside religion. I'm wondering, but inside of the human, not outside.
질문
And I have another one. Yeah. I have 2 points of the characteristic of this thought. Yeah. The next part, the next characteristic of the Daejeon thought is the religion of organism. I have heard that the characteristic of institute is the Center for Process Studies. This institute insisted the philosophy of organism, right? Yeah. So I can say this religion is the religion of organism. Religion of organism. It's similar to the process studies. So I can say this Korean religion is the religion of organism. So I like this way of thinking. Yeah.
마시고 싶으면 마시죠. 없으세요? 시간 벌어서
공복선 제가 한 가지 광고 빨리.
광고 그럼 두 분 우리가 박수 한번 감사합니다.
At the beginning, I forgot to ask the respondent to submit your critics to me. But now I'm going to, request you and invite you to send it to me, Dr. Daniel. Because considering these papers, we never thought about at the planning stage any possibility of publishing this here in U.S. as a proceedings of this conference. So if we could secure enough funds, I think it would be great for us to publish the proceedings of this conference with your critics. So many other people will be able to get some benefit out of this conference. So I will appreciate for your cooperation. And Sam, I know you are about to take off soon, but on your way to Korea, on your Trans-Pacific flight, put those notes into your computer and please send it to me. Then we will collect those. Then in near future, I hope we'll be able to publish it. Thanks. 제가 참 저기 여러분들 그 논평해 주신 거를 꼭 저한테 좀 이메일로 넣어달라고 그런 겁니다. 앞으로 저희들이 돈이 좀 생기면 이걸 좀 아주 굉장한 그 컨퍼런스이기 때문에 여기 출판했으면 좋겠다. 고맙습니다.
이제 두 번째 세션의 마지막 강의입니다. 제목은 금강대로의 우주적 평등과 강화사상. 박현숙 좀 나오시죠. 박현숙 교수님, 서울의 여기 금강삼룡대학이 어디나 모르겠네. 그 다음에 논찬자는 오케이 자인 하산 자인
저기 아무래도 조국의 원성해야 된다.
오케이.
이번 컨퍼런스에요. 대부분 우리 여기 CST 여기 프로세스 센터에 계신 교수님인데 이번 여기 오신 분은 여기 길 건너에 가면 포모나 칼리지가 있습니다. 거기 아주 저명한 5개의 대학들이 있습니다. 그 포모나 칼리지에서 여성학하고 그리고 이슬람을 가르치시는 부교수십니다. 자인 카삼 교수가 오늘 이렇게 특별히 여기 와 주셨습니다. 그래서 특별히 우리가 그 인터내셔널 컨퍼런스에 out of the Islamic tradition, it's great to have you here as part of this. Maybe in the future we'll work together.
Inshallah.
그래서 여러분들 박수로 좀 환영해 주시면
박공 교수님 먼저 시작하시죠.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Hansupa from Bungang, Samjong College of Bungang-daedo. I'm not that good in English. Sorry. From now on, I start my presentation. The subject is the personal equality and the philosophy of communal harmony in Bungang-daedo. The flag of state positioning. The flag of Bungang-daedo. I'm doing introduction. Bungang-daedo puts the transitional and spirit of harmony and concord in the center of their doctrinal systems by creatively interpreting Starting from the date of birth of teacher Toam Lee-seung, Kumgangdedo has 136 years of its own history by now. The first doju, teacher Toam, the second doju, teacher Cheonghwa Lee Seung-ji, and the third doju, teacher Wonlan Lee Il-gyo, as well as their spouses, teacher Seo Ja-am, teacher Min Bo-dan, and teacher Kim Hyang-yeon, are followed by people as absolute saviors called 삼신일체, 삼불세존, or 대도덕 성사 군군부모. These three successive dojus were national leaders who played the role of spiritual pivot for the common people while living together with the flow of the pains of our national history throughout the definitely turbulent times of Korea, including the shock of modernization, the hardship in the Japanese colony, the rapid rush of the Western culture after the liberation, and the chaotic values due to evils of the industrial civilization. In addition, they were religious leaders of foresight who foresaw the changes for the people of the world in the history of civilization and tried to solve them through religious salvation. Thus, Kumgangdedo has undergone few events of division throughout its 100 years long history, and now it is continuing its vivid activities for training of mind and salvation of mankind with about 700,000 members in its congregation. The first dojo, the second dojo, the third dojo. Sanctuary of Kumgangdedo. The face of Gongonbumo and the philosophy of Ojung equality. The religious characteristic of Kumgangdedo include the faith for the three successive leaders, as Gongonbumo of 삼신일체. We generally call them 대도덕 성사 건곤부모, who have succeeded the holy lineage of blood and become saviors called 건곤정위, together with their spouses. The term 건곤부모 indicates 건부 and 곤모, which means that heaven is father while earth is mother. To put simply, 건곤부모 is father and mother, who gives birth to, raises, and governs the world of heavens, earth, and human. And hence it is a creative sublimation of the Oriental view of heaven, earth, and human, the three elements. Moreover, Kumgangdedo emphasizes gender equality among other things, and also emphasizes on the fact that the saints are born as 건곤부모 of Umyang equality by Gongon's establishment. Thus, we believe that the lesson of Kumgangdedo that the garden is Gonmo has come as a savior with Gonbu as her spouses will find its places as a new paradigm in the future culture of mankind. This view of gender equality is based on the unique view of times called Ojung운동. Ojung means the transition between Suncheon and Fucheon. It is time of change as at noon over day. The period of Ojung, like a midday over day, noon, is a shiny period when the shadow does not vanish, and the best period of equality. The period of Ojung is just the transitional one, given that the past Suncheon period was the period Yang. That is to say, the period of division, contradiction, and incompatibility. Whereas the coming Fucheon period is the period of that is to say, the period of harmony, maturity, and coexistence. 오중대원 is a period of 상생. To simplify put, 상생 is to make others well. Basically, it is also a problem of ethics and morality to reduce one's desire and care for others. 도성독립 and 광화중생, which imply the resurrection of deteriorated morality, are the greatest issues and goals of 금강제도. 금강제도 has established as guidelines for training 금강 3대 보훈, 백지환원, 중용지도, and 지성무식. 백지환원 means the restoration of the original pure mind. 중용지도, the working on the religious impartial way, and 지성무식, the endless love and sincerity for others. Here, once again, we see the spirit of 상생 and harmony. 생열이 금강제도 sacrificial ceremonies. 그리고 예, 그러니까 의식 전에 법부를 치는 거거든요.
법부?
법부.
법부.
네.
Drumming before the ceremonial rite.
여기 어디 있습니까? 로케이션?
춘천함도 연기군에 있어요. 행정수도 온다는데 새로운
요새 그 이명박의 그 신도시한 바로 거기 있습니다. 바로 거기 있습니다. 그러니까 성곽장에서 아직 그걸 미리 아시고 이런 장소를
여기 박 교수님,
네.
그 영어로 읽으시는 것이 그 발음 때문에들 일살로 못 알아들 것 같으니까 읽으라 그러시고 쉽게 좀 이렇게 크게 하시면 좋을 것 같아요. 분들의 이해를
그래도
그게 낫겠죠.
그냥 얘기를 또
그냥 우리 말로 하시고 다 읽으시니까 괜히 양쪽 다 못 들으면 어려울 것 같아요.
그래서 저걸 따라가면 되니까.
영어를 이렇게 하면 돼요.
우리가 못 따라가겠어요. 이해를 해야 되니까. 그 어떻습니까? 그냥 계속해요.
좋습니다.
이걸 좀 딱하게 할 수 있을까요? 저걸?
여기 불을 좀 끄면
불을 좀 끄지.
화면 보고 설명하시면
네.
한국말 세계 공통어로 만들어.
그거는 책을 못 본다.
볼 수 있습니까?
practice of respecting for heaven and earth and the philosophy of cosmic harmony. The most important problem that mankind should solve for the persistence and development of human civilization is the conciliation between man and nature. As a result of the frequent exploitation and destruction of nature during the process of industrialization in terms of the human-centered worldview, even the persistence of man has come to be threatened. Now humans are definitely required to escape from the human-centered worldview and shift to the ecology-centered worldview. In this respect, recently much light is shed on the uniform and organic Oriental thought. The core of the Oriental worldview is the worldview of the three elements, heaven, earth, and man, and its greatest property is the recognition of nature and man as indivisible. 금강제도 clearly advocates the worldview of the three elements, heaven, earth, and man, in the core of its doctrine. Thus, it undoubtedly naturally reveals the organic and the monist way of thought. Considering that the first of 금강 실행십조, the basic practical virtues is 경천지, while 금강십계율 takes 물기천지인. 경천지라는 것은 respect for heaven and earth고, 물기천지는 do not deceive heaven, earth and man. 물기천지인 the first commandment. We can see that 금강대도 is based on the world view of the three elements among others. 금강십계율, 금강실행십조 10가지씩 되어 있습니다. Also, the absolute face of 건곤부모 means the complexion of the cosmic form considering of heaven, earth, and man, which is so-called philosophy of 우주가와. The statement from teacher Toam's 도덕가 that who is not my brother and who is not my friend, as heaven and earth are parents, the sun and the moon are brothers, and the stars are friends, implies that he takes heaven and earth born by 건곤부모 as a home and the sun, the moon and the stars as well as the older people of the world as brothers and friends. Also, teacher 청학's claim, 포, 그러니까 어머니가 아기를 이렇게 싸고 있는 그 포 is the close of 태. A younger brother is born after 9 months in mother's womb, where he has lived until his birth, following his older brother's 태, 그러니까 close of 태. Hence, 동포, brethren. How could it be that people of the world just notice the brethren of their own parents, but not the brethren of 건곤부모? Everyone of the people is our brother, as our 대성사 부모's life, favorable virtues as 건곤부모 have influence on everything. Means that all the people in the world are brethren and brothers. Thus, the theory of viviparity is advocated in the sense that the world was begun neither by the Genesis nor by evolution, but was born by 건곤부모. 청학스, teacher 청학스 claim. The philosophy of cosmic familiar harmony through the face of 건곤부모 in 금강대도 provides us with necessary ecological spirituality by creatively subliming the organic and monist oriental view of the world. The idea that heaven and earth becomes man and man becomes heaven and earth, and that in the universe as a home, all creatures are brothers, and brethren is evaluated as a reading thought that can provide profound inspiration to the present deep theory of ecology and ecofeminism. 신년에 성전에 이렇게 세배를 드리거든요. 그리고 나서 민속 축제를 하는 장면이 있어요.
Folk festival.
이거는 로터스 뮤직 페스티벌. The second dose teacher 청학 made wrote 흥기 도덕가 about 7,000 records in 25 years old and made 가무. 흥기 도덕가 가무. training for mind, body, and spirit, and the philosophy of moral enlightenment. 금강대도 took the crisis of the present human civilization to be caused by the corruption of moral. Teacher Tuan believes that religion in general should be able to awaken humans' morality and leading them to practice. The goal of 금강대도 is to cultivate desirable persons through heart, mind training and moral practice, and further construct a morally enlightened world by spreading morality among people. Though 금강대도 suggests that humans can participate in the embodiment of heaven and earth, it does not believe that everyone can. Teacher Tuan thinks that humans endowed with innate morality with which they can be paralleled with heaven and earth, but simultaneously seduced by the physical force of their body, need work of cultivating Tao, ascetic practice, in order to complete their efforts. 금강대도 expresses such things as 심성배합과 자수심성. Notice that the uniqueness of 금강대도's training program lies in the fact that it puts stress on the match between the training of heart and mind and the training of sin, body. Teacher Chonghak advocates the match between the training of heart and mind and the training of body by saying that there is nothing valuable but body. Hence, if your training of heart and mind reaches your body, the latter will be filled with heaven and earth, and the former with the sun and the moon. 금강대도 emphasizes the practice of morality through the unification of heart, mind, and body. It requires not the weak and passive faith in which one blindly depends on the power of God, but the active and aggressive attitude towards the sincerity practice for active development of one's own potentials. This is the very philosophy of 도덕계와. 금강대도 regards the present moment not as a period of the new opening of heaven and earth, but as a time of humanism, the blooming of morality. That is to say, its concern is that the Tao of man, among others, out of three elements, has not been established yet. In the universe, considering of the three elements, only the last element escapes from its Tao and is obstructing the peace of the entire universe as it goes on the deviant way rather than realizing morality, while the first two keep their own Tao to unfold the realization of morality. If man observes his own Tao, the Tao of the three elements is completed, but if not, the Tao is not completed. Here we may be reminded of man's special stage as a moral subject. In short, it is man who owns the key to the destiny of the universe. Considering that the only subject who can overcome the crisis of civilization confronting us is mankind, and that man's own consciousness shift and practice are the only alternative to escaping from the crisis, the role of man as a moral subject should be further emphasized. In this respect, we can achieve much implications from the lessons of 금강대도 that emphasizes the role of the human Tao. The world today requires us to overcome our individual particularities and to make efforts toward the common goals, the survival and prosperity of mankind with the consciousness of the fact that all of us are members of one global village. For this, it is necessary to escape from the hierarchical structures of unilateral ruling and oppression, and hence to shift our recognition to the fact that its existence is dependent on and organically related to others. In this respect, we want to get possibilities and clues for radical change our forms of life from Kumgangdaedo's cosmic equality and spirit of Gawang, and hope that this will be developed into concrete practical movements by achieving universality within the philosophy of Korea and East Asia. Thank you.
Dr. Kassam is going to respond.
I want to thank the presenters and the responders today for making this an incredibly rich, illuminating and thought-provoking day. I have to admit that when I was first asked to respond to a paper today, I thought I know so little about the Korean religious traditions in general, let alone the new religious traditions. So how will I do this? However, on reading the paper that I was sent, which of course you did not hear in its entirety, but you do have in your book, I found that actually as an Islamicist, a scholar of Islam, that perhaps the most resonating aspects spoke to me through my understanding of Sufism. And that is really the bridge that can be made between the kind of thinking that we have seen presented today and Sufi Islam. I might mention the works of Sachiko Murata, titled The Tao of Islam, as well as Toshihiko Jutsu, a Japanese scholar, who did a comparative study between the thought of Ibn al-Arabi, Sufi thinker, and Lao Tzu. But I am going to restrict my comments today perhaps more to the feminist and to the ecological aspects of the paper that I saw. So as noted by Professors Lee and Park, neoliberal economic globalization is playing havoc with relations between members of different faiths and ethnicities, and with the Earth's ecology and environmental balance. They also point to the dangers of dichotomous thinking and dualism, which serve not to clarify, but rather to create oppositions where none might exist. Instead, they propose that the concept of sansang, and excuse me if I massacre the pronunciations of unfamiliar Korean terms, or coexistence taken from the Book of Changes, may be useful in enabling us to reconceptualize the disharmonious and antagonistic relations between self and other embodied in the state of Sang-Yuk. Rather, Sansang can be seen to facilitate interconnected relations between self and other that are intertwined, in that one keeps the other alive, rather than what characterizes the state of Sang-Yuk, in which one kills the other. The challenge we face, they suggest, is how to convert relations characterized as Sang-Yuk or disharmonious, indeed deathly, into relations characterized by Sansang or harmonious, indeed life-sustaining. So I want to eliminate some of what I've written simply because I think that we may be running out of time. But one of the key points that they make is that two moves should be noted in the tradition of Kumgangdaedo, which are one, that the male heaven and female earth, both conceptualized as sacred and as divinities, are in partnership and not in a relationship where one rules over the other, thus switching out the notion of patriarchy and replacing it with the notion of shared responsibility. And the second move they make is that the boundaries between heaven, earth, and human are sufficiently fluid that one could make the statement heaven and earth are human, and human is heaven and earth. suggesting that although a logical distinction may be made between them, they nonetheless coexist as a unitary triad ontologically. If, as several ecofeminists such as Rosemary Radford-Ruther, Sally Wood-Fay, Kathleen Keller, Carolyn Merchant, and Vandana Shiva have argued, patriarchy's hierarchical view of nature and the female body as subservient to male domination, use, and exploitation. If this has contributed to the ideological underpinnings of environmental overuse and degradation, then the reimagining of a unitary triad in which heaven, earth, and human are three nodes of an interactive and mutually supporting whole draws away the imbalances. And so one could argue that Sangyuk, this harmony generated by patriarchy, can be totally undermined by revisioning the unitary triad. So then enters the temporal dimension of the transition from the period of strife, Sunchun, to the period of harmony, Huchun, mediated by the 10,000 year plus period of Ojung, which as the midpoint establishes 5 equalities. And some of these equalities were gone through in the presentation that you made. First, that of heaven and earth. Second, that of the two deities, heaven and earth, and man, or humans, as I prefer to say. Third, that of humans with each other regardless of class. Fourth, equality of all creatures, human and non-human. And finally, equality of life and death. Such equalities seek to undo the hierarchies of dominance and subservience and imbue the spirit of cooperation and coexistence. Working with the principle of Sanseng, which is life-enabling, then means to work from an ethic of care rather than from an ethic of self-interest. The authors rightly point out that the dualistic worldview that has characterized many Occidental thinkers, and, as Carolyn Merchant has pointed out, the mechanization of nature in the early modern period has been in part responsible for the reckless manner in which the Earth's resources have been plundered for profit. Further, as the authors point out, the human-centered and dualistic metaphysical view, characteristic of the Western worldview, has led to practices that have resulted in threatening even the persistence of human life on Earth, not to mention the thousands of species that die daily. In this context, then, the ecology-centered worldview offered by Oriental philosophies can be a promising alternative to dualistic Occidental ways of thinking. Indeed, they draw attention to the fraternity of all creation upheld by Tongtan Daido, and note the rich potential of this way of thought in supporting the ecologist's call to honor relationships among natural things and imbue moral status to non-human entities such as land, water, plants, animals, and inorganic natural substances. Such a philosophy argues also against the killing of animals, calling for a herbivore rather than a carnivore diet. Another element favored by environmentalists who point out the tremendous drain on resources as well as the high level of toxicity caused by industrial meat production. This is all to the good. However, it is pertinent here to point out a couple of issues. First, it is true that the dominant strain of dualism in Occidental thought has been responsible for much of the environmental degradation we see today, with its concomitant maltreatment of both human females and the earth, seen as fertile bodies important for regeneration. Further, the earth has been feminized as well as rendered unimportant as a temporary home, while the life of the spirit and heaven have been projected as having far more importance than the ideologies of salvation that Occidental religions have put forth. However, it would be unfair to say that Oriental philosophies have not done the same. For example, talking about Hinduism here, in elevating Purusha, spirit, over Prakriti, matter, and in elevating goddesses while treating human females as subservient to males, and indeed unable to enter heaven unless first reborn as males, one could argue that the theistic Asian religions have also replicated the dominant patriarchal dualistic tones found in Western or Occidental religious traditions. A feminist and environmental examination of Buddhism and other historical Asian traditions would also find that the record on the treatment of females and the earth has not been entirely stainless either. Indeed, one could argue that with the scientific advances that have made large-scale industrialization possible, making it possible to destroy large tracts of forests, spread tons of poisonous pesticides over monoculture crops, and blow off tops of mountains in search of coal, and change the courses of rivers as well as dam them, that elites all over the world have jumped on the bandwagon of neoliberal economic globalization to extend the practices of earth and labor exploitation that provide an alternative narrative to the wealth for all narrative promoted by organizations such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, and the multi-transnational corporations that roam the world looking for new materials, new resources, markets, and pools of labor. In other words, I'm arguing that just as process thought here in Fairmont and in Korea has challenged the underpinnings of dominant Western thought and religious expression that is leading humanity and Earth to the brink of disaster, so too do new religions have to examine the traditions out of which they themselves emerge to offer a critique of the ideologies and practices that have led to the current situation we face together. Second, I worry whether we can continue to use the terms Occidental and Oriental with any degree of clarity. Essentializing Occidental thought as dualistic ignores the complexity we have seen in recent years, specifically with respect to environmental theologizing and thinking. For instance, John Cogg's distinguished student, Catherine Keller, does not retreat from Christianity per se, but calls for reimagining theopoetics to engage theopolitics, to create a theological paradigm where body and spirit no longer bifurcate, but also oscillate, in order to affirm Sally McFaig's metaphor of the universe as God's body, a body that can be healed. In another instance, we can look to even how traditional interpretations of Christianity, as embodied in evangelical Christianity, have, through the efforts of people such as Richard Cizik and others, reread the sacred text to see the verse that gives human dominion over the earth as a verse that calls humans to express that dominion in a spirit of stewardship, in what he and others have called creation care. So these two examples suggest that Occidental thought and religious theology cannot be essentialized as dualistic, but rather must also be seen as attempting to resist in the first example and respond to, in the second example, the very dualism that, as it revealed its powerful ugliness, brought both movements into being. Moreover, as faiths have traversed the globe through the processes of migration and missionizing, one can no longer hold the binaries of Occidental, Oriental in place, as old dualisms and patriarchies, regardless of where in the globe they originate, and I suggest they are present in some form everywhere, reinvent themselves using more localized metaphors and practices and must be identified as such, regardless of culture or religious tradition. Finally, I would like to suggest, and you didn't hear this part in the paper that was presented, I would like to suggest that Huntington simply continues to divert our attention from dealing with the privations brought about by neoliberal economic globalization by presenting the resistance to such globalization in cultural terms. In doing so, he draws upon the power of representation to set up straw enemies that consign vast numbers of people in the world to prisoners of their ideology or religion. This form of otherization predicated on ethnicities or religious affiliations then opens the way for enacting tremendous violence upon them, as we have already seen historically with the Holocaust and currently see with the so-called war on terror. Rather, we must retreat from thinking dualistically in our minds and ask ourselves, how does the power of representation of the Occident as dualistic and religion as directly and indirectly involved on the background of various terrorisms and wars occurring in the present global village, how do such representations serve us in bringing about the political will to call governments to express stewardship of the commons and place caps on exploitative, ecological, and labor corporate practices? The failure of Copenhagen to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to any substantial effect shows that the very promising movements we see in many of the Earth's religious traditions, such as the one discussed here, Kumdam Daedo, must not be derailed by setting up others against which it contrasts itself. Rather, it is well positioned to mobilize its enlightened envisioning of harmony during this time of Ojung and the blooming of morality to make a difference in how, as the global intersects with the local, harmonious morality can guide how destructive power is engaged. I was especially struck by the last line of the office of the paper, which I repeat here, and I quote, "We want to get possibilities and clues for radically changing our forms of life from Kumkan Daedo's cosmic equality and spirit of Gakon, and hope that this will be developed into concrete, practical movements by achieving universality within the philosophies of Korea and East Asia." My sense is that the potential for developing concrete, practical movements is perhaps far more important than spending energy on achieving universality within the philosophies of Korea and East Asia, as the latter is a culturally globalizing move that draws away the strategic and moral thinking necessary at this juncture in human history and in ecological time to deal with the destruction wrought by economic globalization. Thank you.
잠깐 코멘트 하시고요.
죄송합니다. 제가 애가 중학교 입학할 때 저도 같이 대학원에 입학을 해서 그때서부터 공부를 시작했습니다. 그래서 영어라든지 그런 게 너무 짧아서 잘 제대로 못 읽어드려서 죄송하고요. 그래서 잘 이렇게 말씀하시는 걸 못 알아듣겠어요. 근데 보니까 그 남녀 평등에 대해서 이제 그런 연구를 하셨고, 그래서 남녀 평등에 대해서 이제 말씀을 하신 것 같은데, 그 금강대도의 사상은 그러니까 완전한 남녀 평등을 실현하고 있다고라고 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다. 그래서 구원자로서 오신 그 분들도 건부와 곤모님께서 그러니까 건본 정의로서 그 양위분이 같이 오셨고 또 따라서 금강대도의 그 조직 내에서도 남자는 금강도인이라고 하고 여자는 연화도인이라고 해서 그 조직으로서도 금강대도와 연화대도가 같이 병존을 합니다. 그런데 이제 지금 이제 Heaven is Father, Mother is Earth is Mother 이거에 대해서 이제 그런 어떤 남녀 불평등이 아닌가 그런 말씀을 하신 건지는 잘 모르겠는데 그 유교나 송대의 그 성리학에서 보면 천존집이라고 해서 하늘은 높고 땅은 낮다 해서 어떤 그 하늘과 땅의 불평등과 교조화를 했었는데 금강대도에서는 그 하늘과 땅 그러니까 그 남자와 여자 이런 것이 그러니까 남자는 높고 여자는 낮다 그런 것이 아니라 남자와 여자가 완전히 평등을 이룬다. 이제 그런 평등이 되는 그런 원리로서 지금의 이 시대를 다른 대도에서 다른 그 신종교에서는 개벽이다 이렇게 말을 하는데 이 대도에서는 도덕이 개화되는 시대다 도덕개화 시대라고 말씀을 하셨습니다. 그리고서 그렇게 음양 평등이 이루어지는 그런 원리가 태극과 무국의 그 손해 비유로서 말씀을 하셨는데 이렇게 손가락을 한번 이제 그러니까 이대 노주님이 말씀을 하셨거든요. 근데 손을 세어 보면 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯 이렇게 하면 없는데 이것이 무국이고 다시 또 여섯, 일곱, 여덟, 아홉, 열 하면 펼쳐져서 있는 것이 태극이다. 그래서 태극과 무국이 하나의 손 안에서 이렇게 이제 있다가 없어지고 없다가 있어지는 이런 관계지 하나의 원리로서 이렇게 돌아가는 거지 그것이 태극과 무국이 분리되는 것이 아니다. 그것처럼 금강과 연하의 관계도 그러니까 하나로서 돌아가는 것이지 분리되는 것이 아니다라고 그렇게 말씀을 하셨습니다. 이상 마치겠습니다.
한번 대답을 하나.
네.
그러니까 우리 지금 갓삼 교수가 박 교수님의 것을 다 잘 이해했습니다. 단지 한 가지 저거는 서양 종교에서의 그 듀얼리즘이나 내지는 그 남녀에 대한 그 발견된 게 아니라 이론은 그렇지만 예를 들어서 힌두이즘을 얘기하는데 그 힌두이즘에 나오는 그 여신에 관한 게 나오고 역시 인간의 여성은 남자에 속하는 그러한 그러니까 이것은 지금 금강대도에서는 그렇다고 저는 자꾸 생각한다. 하늘과 땅의 차이가 없이 다 똑같은 동등한 관계라고 생각하지만 실제에 있어서 서양뿐만 아니라 동양에서도 그 남자, 여자가 대부분 남자의 재산이나 아니면 종속된 관계로 또 그렇게 살아온 그런 것에 대한 것을 리마인드 시키는 그 점에서를 그러니까 박 교수님 대답을 좀 사실 우리 한국에서 이론은 그렇지만 사실상 우리가 그 이론대로 잘 살았느냐 지금 여기서 그 개명된 그거 때라고 그렇게 말씀하셨는데 그러니까 그거를 대답을 한마디 하죠.
지금 이제 제가 말씀드린 거에서 그 어느 정도 대답이 됐다고
여기 됐을 때 통역이 안 되니까 타민족들이 어려운 것 같아요. 통역을 해주셔야 되거든요.
아직까지는 그 이제 전례적으로 이렇게 전통적인 그런 속에서 아직 우리나라도 그러니까 동양의 어떤 그런 전일적인 그런 사상을 가지고 있지만 그런 남녀 불평등의 문화가 아직까지는 잔존한다고 볼 수 있습니다. 그런데 그런 페미니스트들이 많은 노력을 했고 그래서 지금은 어느 정도 그래도 그 남성과 여성의 어떤 양성 평등의 그런 사회가 구현되고 있는 것이 아닌가 이제 그렇게 생각을 해보는데요. 여기 지금 여성학 하시는 오해란 선생님이 계시는데
외국인들이 지구에서 또 다음 순서가 있으면 굉장히 없습니다. 자, 우리 박수를 한번.
잠깐만 앉아주십시오. 지금 20분 동안의 그 이 커피 브레이크입니다. 그런데 장님은 제리 캠버 박사십니다. 연합감리교회 물론 목사님이시고 오랫동안 그 대학과 대학교에서 일을 하신 그러한 총장님이십니다. 잠깐 나와서 인사해 주시기를 바랍니다.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you here to Claremont. We very much appreciate your coming and happy to see so many people.
여러분들이 여기 오신 것을 저는 크게 기뻐하고요. 여러분들 환영합니다.
I would like to take just a moment to tell you about the direction that this school of theology is taking.
저는 잠깐 동안 이 신학교가 앞으로 새로 나가는 그 방향 설정에 대해서 잠깐 말씀드립니다.
When we look at the impact that our religions have had on the world, many times we see violence.
우리가 과거에 우리 종교가 이 세상에 미친 그 영향을 살펴볼 때 대부분 많은 그 바이올레이션 폭력적인 그러한 것을 많이 한 것을 우리는 알고 있습니다.
And we wonder why the violence happens.
왜 이러한 폭력이 종교의 이름으로 일어납니까?
But here we are educating ourselves in a segregated way, and then we're surprised when we don't teach our graduates how to get along.
우리가 우리 신학생들을 우선 교육시킬 때도 우리는 그 사람들이 완전히 이 세상으로부터 분리된, 격리된 그러한 상태에서 교육을 시켰고 그러니까 그 사람들이 나가서 이 세상을 어떻게 이해할 수 있겠습니까?
So our plan is here to bring together seminaries that represent different religious traditions.
그래서 우리 이 신학교는 이제 우리 종교뿐만 아니라 다른 타종교들을 대표하는 신학자들과 더불어 이제 모여오게 하는 것입니다.
We will cluster them around a small university that will feature some academic subject concentration.
그래서 우리는 대학교라고 하는 그 이름하에 그 각 종교를 대표하는 그 학부를 두어서 우리가 함께 일하려고 하는 것입니다.
Each seminary will continue to educate its own leaders for the future using its own curriculum.
그래서 거기 그 여러 다양한 종교를 대표하는 그 신학교들이 같이 와서 예를 들어서 이슬람 신학교, 뭐 다른 신학교들이 같이 와서 그 각 신학교는 자기들의 종교 지도자를 따로 배출합니다.
But to be a partner, each seminary must also agree to contribute to a new shared multi-religious curriculum.
그럼에도 동시에 그 다른 그 종교를 대표하는 신앙을 대표하는 그 신학교들이 이제 함께 공헌을 해서 공동적인 상호 이해를 증진시킨 그러한 커리큘럼을 할 수 있습니다.
That curriculum will be designed to do away with misconceptions, create mutual respect, and lead to the possibility of collaboration among our religions to solve major world problems.
그래서 바로 그러한 과정을 통해서 우리들을 갈라놓았던 그 모든 것을 저희들이 어떻게든지 넘어서서 이제 상호 존중, 상호 이해를 통한 상호 존중을 통해서 우리가 이 세상에 공헌할 수 있는 그러한 지도자를 배양합니다.
We believe until religious leadership begins to see one another as brothers and sisters, we will never be able to solve the problem of creating world peace.
우리 종교 지도자들이 다른 종교를 대표하는 지도자들이 함께 와서 얼굴을 맞대고 이러한 생각을 서로 나누는 바로 오늘 우리가 하는 것입니다. 이러한 것을 하지 못하는 한 어떻게 우리들이 이 불연된 이 세상의 문제를 해결할 수 있겠는가 이 말입니다.
That's the short version of what we have in our plans here, and so we hope you will be interested and supportive as we move this agenda forward.
이것이 여러분들에게 오늘 제가 간단하게 짧은 시간에 말씀드릴 수 있는 거고 그렇기 때문에 앞으로 또 여러분들의 도움을 기대하겠습니다.
아주 좋은 말씀에서 고맙고 내일 우리가 같은 컨퍼런스를 하는데 한국 학교인데도 불구하고 아주 배타적인 태도를 취하는데 제가 내일 강의하기 전에 학장님 말씀을 꼭 전하는데 또 학장님한테 한 가지 부탁드릴 말씀은 여기 한국에서 30여 명이나 왔는데 여기 넌 코리안 가운데 이 장갑 교수님 한 분밖에 안 나와 있는 게 굉장히 유감입니다. 다음 내년에 할 때는 여기 신학교 교수님들, 학생들이 이 행사에 많이 참여하도록 보내주시길 바랍니다.
Tomorrow they will hold some similar conferences. One of the Korean, the Oriental medical school, medicine school. And however, the students there are very sort of close-minded. So when other religious representatives are there, will be there, so they are very much resistant. So he is going to quote what you said now, tomorrow, in Korean community, Koreatown. And also, on the second part is this, well, you are about to move to a new direction, and it is very much appreciated. And however, when I look around here, I see only John Tom representing the faculty and all this community, and I really don't see any other faculties or students other than Koreans. So maybe if we will do this kind of events next time, maybe hopefully more of the mainline majority faculty being able to.
I would certainly hope so. This is a good indication of why we need to.
Okay, that's one of your graduates. Yeah, one of your graduates, and okay, so yeah, okay. He's retired from teaching in Korea. All right, so all right. 여러분들 박수로 환영해 주시면 brought a book. Yeah.
말씀드릴게요. 이 책이 지금 일대 교수님께서 직접 쓰신 그 경전이에요. 그래서 이제 이대 교수님께서 그 당시 출간을 하셨었는데 다시 그 3대 교수님 시대에 그러니까 최근에 다시 재편집이 되어서 이렇게 사본으로 나왔습니다. 그래서 이거를 여기 학교에 기증을 하려고 이렇게 가져왔습니다.
These are the writings of the originator
자, 커피 타임입니다. 20분도 더 모이겠습니다.
1920s, 18th, 1990s, in those days, 100 years ago, and educated women and deploy them as the religious leaders. Can you believe this? Oh, that was really awakening kind of, information to me. And I was very much ignorant upon my own tradition and Korean traditions and all. So I thought I'd better share this today, because the moderator of this is one of those clergywomen of Won Buddhism, Reverend Jian Lee. So let's welcome.
Thank you for introducing Won Buddhism in such a nice way.
Microphone, please.
Microphone.
Use.
This is final session of this a meaningful conference. I give big applause from my heart to all of you who are here until the last session of this meaningful conference. I'd like to introduce Professor Do Bong Kim. Professor Do Bong Kim is an ordained minister in Won Buddhism. The shirt he wears now is the female main minister's uniform. Won Buddhist male minister's uniform. And the costume you see now, this dress I wear now is the Won Buddhist female minister's uniform. Professor Kim majored in Buddhism at Wonhwa University. His dissertation was based on the methodology of the Won News Project. Presently, he is researching Buddhism, Won Buddhism, religious education, and new religion. He is presently a professor of Won Buddhist studies at Wonhwa University. And the respondent is Professor Lee Chung, the Texas Tech University, the respondent. Let's give a big applause.
Just introduce 도봉기. 원고가 길기 때문에 짧게 줄쳐진 언더라인된 부분을 중심으로 얘기를 하도록 하겠습니다. Consider page 107. It is very difficult and careful to settle or arrange the relation between Buddhism and non-Buddhism.
크게 좀 말씀해 잘 들리지 않아요.
마이크를 빼놓을 것 같아요. 소리가 안 들려요.
It is very difficult and careful to settle or
By the way, this banner is not the Won Bulgyo banner, okay? Be aware of that. This is just some others, okay? Be aware of that.
One banner is just a circle, one circle. Very simple sign. See the page 107. It is very difficult and careful to set or arrange the relation between Buddhism and non-Buddhism. I choose to put the Dharma word of founding Master Sotasan in order rather than to express my humble opinion. To make you understand easily on the connection of this word, in most cases, whole paragraph has been printed as they are. During the presentation, I will focus on main and the 4 points which are underlined. I hope this will be a helpful informative paper on Buddhism. Preface. Before discuss on the connection between Won Buddhism and Buddhism, I would like to introduce a real story that Sotaesan and Korean tradition Buddhists had involved in. The time of the story was around 1920, from 1920 to 1924. And it is the story of Sotaesan and the son, Master Baek Hangmyeong, as follows. 멜로디 코트 센텐스 생략하도록 하겠습니다. This is the true story. One age in the above story. In the above story, there are
there are a direction of Buddhist reformation which Sotaesan has intended, and an aspect of exchange with traditional Buddhism through Master Hangmyeong. Actually, Sotaesan and Master Hangmyeong shared many common ideas on Buddhist reformation. Master Hangmyeong, who appointed as a chief monk of Unejang Temple at the time, had attempted to initiate new Buddhist movement with Sotaesan. However, they could not obtain an agreement of monks of Nejang Temple. Then, Sotaesan had to establish another organization and to initiate the new Buddhist reformation movement. The proposal for the invitation of a new Buddhist movement by Master Hangmyeong and the setback of the attempt is recorded in the history of Won Buddhism as follows. Under the basis of above proposal, Sotaesan sent 5 pupils to Nejang Temple for preparation. As it was mentioned, for the opposition of monks of Nejang Temple, a new Buddhist reformation movement in the boundary of traditional Buddhism could not set up. Main theme, what is Won Buddhism? Won Buddhism was founded by Pak Jongbin, the great master Sotaesan, on April 28, 1916, in Yeonggwang, Jeonnam Province, Korea, through after his great enlightenment. Next page, change of name of Won Buddhism. See the box, Won Buddhism, the first name is 1917 August, Saving Union. First name is Saving Union. And second name is 1918 October, World of Great Brightness, where is the home of clarifying spirit and establishing righteous society. 1990, third name, October 1919 October, the Association for the Establishment of the Society for the Study of Buddha Dharma. 1924 April, the Society for the Study of Buddha Dharma. 1947 April, Won Buddhism. It is clearly noticed from the change of name that Won Buddhism has related with Buddhism from earlier time of the Buddha. 3. Meaning of Buddhism and Buddha Dharma. It was already clarified through the change of name of the order that Won Buddhism has related with Buddhism from the inauguration stage. However, Won Buddhism differentiates the meaning of Buddha Dharma, which signifies the teaching of Buddha, from the traditional Buddhism in Korean history. Buddhism in Won Buddhism has comparatively wide meaning. It is not only mean Sakyamuni Buddha-centered Buddhism. Rather, it means the teaching by Sakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment. But in need to separate from the traditional Buddhism, the terminology of Buddha Dharma is mainly utilized. Frankly, Won Buddhism discriminates and the historical traditional Buddhism and the Buddha Dharma as the system of teaching of by enlightenment. The background of the kind of recognition will be elaborated in the next chapter. For reference, following the Dharma word of Master Jeongsan can be helpful to understand the reason and meaning of naming of the order as Won Buddhism. Underlying pattern, the metaphysical aspect of one circle is the realm that cannot be described in word or forms. However, the physical aspects of one are expressed in all beings of the universe. Thus, one is the origin of all dharmas and the reality of all dharmas. Next to underlying pattern, the term Buddha's meaning enlightenment and the mind. The truth of one may be so perfect as it includes all dharmas. However, it will be just an empty principle if there is no mind that is enlightened to it. Thus, the two terms one and plural, inseparably related to each other, referring to an identical truth. One Buddhism understands Buddhism as Buddha Dharma, which is content of the enlightenment of Sakyamuni, rather than Sakyamuni Buddha-centered Buddhism. Therefore, one Buddhism shows its attitude to traditional Buddhism as follows. Underline factor. Grand Master Sotaesan has mainly created the doctrine, sometimes innovated the old doctrine, and sometimes adapted a specific point from the old doctrine. 4. Formation of view on Buddhism of Sotaesan. Cultural background of Yeongbang Jeonnam province in Korea. Sotaesan has born and was brought up at Giljongmi, Baeksumeon, Yeongbang, Jeonnam, Korea. Near the village there is no small port, Bopsongpo. Bopsongpo is known as the first arrival place of Buddhism at Baekje dynasty, and it has a Bulgap temple which is known as established at 398. It is said that this area was flourished with Buddhist culture for many temples and amenities like Bulgap temple, Hebron, and so on. However, at present, extant temple and amenities are not showing such prosperity of old days. Environment of Buddhist culture of Yeongbang area is the lifetime of Sotaesan might not be greatly different from present day. Sotaesan's meaning of Diamond Sutra. Inauguration of Buddhism beginning at the enlightenment of founding master Sotaesan at April 1916. The content of enlightenment of Sotaesan recorded in the one Buddhist scripture as it follows. From the beginning of searching through enlightenment, Sotaesan never had been studied on Buddhism. However, the expressed content of his enlightenment almost corresponds to view of world and truth in Buddhism. After his enlightenment, he had read scripture and the canons of other religions all over. Among them, after reading Diamond Sutra, he described his teacher in mind and origin as Sakyamuni Buddha. His thought was expressed as follows. Diamond Sutra, Sakyamuni Buddha is truly the sage of sages. Even though I have attained the way without the guidance of teacher, looking back from the time of my initial aspiration up to final enlightenment, many aspects of my experience coincide with the practice and the saving of Buddha in the past. Hence, I adopted Sakyamuni Buddha as my origin guide. I will create in this world perfect and complete this religion order by taking the Buddha Dharma as its core principle. The teaching of Buddha Dharma is the supreme way. Also, Sotaesan explicate in the scripture of founding master Prefatory 3 that the teaching of Buddha Dharma is the supreme way of world under heaven. It illuminates the principle of the true nature, so the crucial matter of birth and death. Elucidate the principle of cause and effect, command the path of practice, and thus surpass all other religious doctrine. 113. After comprehending Buddha Dharma through Dharma Sutra and meeting the teaching of Buddha, Sotaesan admired the capability of Buddha as follows. The Buddha unsurpassed great past is immensely high, deep, and vast. Hence, his wisdom and capacity cannot be expressed and recorded either verbally or in writing. Next page. underlined part. Hence, our aim is to strive to attain the Buddha's wisdom and abilities and exert ourselves to deliver all sentient beings. Sotezan's criticism of Buddhism. The cultural background where Sotezan lived proved by him a view on criticism of traditional Buddhism and new reformation. Sotezan's view on requirement of a new reformation of traditional Buddhism at the time was expressed as follows. The founding master said, as a religion that has deep ties with Korea, Buddhism received much welcome and rejection. It was welcomed several hundred years ago, but rejected in more recent times due to change in political power and the rising influence of Confucianism. Buddhists became estranged from the secular world and hid themselves deep in the mountains. Next page, underlined pattern. However, while continuing to live his sort of life, the Buddha's unsurpassed great past has not been made known in the secular world, and the monk have fallen into the Hinayana practice of saving only oneself. Buddha's unsurpassed great way remains the same. We must reform certain portion of its doctrine and its institution, so that the Buddhism of the few becomes for Buddhism of the many, and this partial practice became a well-rounded practice. Buddha's four, Sotezan's direction of Buddhist reformation. He clearly and minutely elaborates on the direction of Buddhist reformation. It is as follows. The Buddha Dharma of the future, however, will not be the Buddha Dharma of institutions like those of the past. Let it will become a practice for everyone without leaving the occupation of scholars, farmers, artisans, or merchants, and regardless of whether one has left the household life to honor. In worship the Buddhas, we will not limit ourselves to paying homage only to Buddhism, but we realize the manifold things of the universe and the Dharma realm of empty space are the Buddhas, so that there will be no distinction between our work or our practice. Thus, we handle worldly affairs well. We will be persons who practice the Buddha Dharma well, and if we practice the Buddha Dharma well, we will also be persons who handle worldly affairs well. Furthermore, as for the method of making Buddha offering, there will not be a separately distinct designated place for them, nor will there be any separate Buddha. In whatever matter and for whatever reason a person make a Buddha offering, that will make it an offering place and will ensure that the Buddha's present. Next page. The doctrine of reformation of Korean Buddhism also contains its direction and important outline as follows. Direction. From Buddhism of abroad to Buddhism of Korea. From Buddhism of past to Buddhism of present and future. From Buddhism of monk in mountain and minority to Buddhism of the general public. To pursue Buddhism in light of contemporary and of public methodology. From belief of Buddha image to belief of Dharmakaya Buddha, Ilwonsang. From partial practice to holistic practice of three studies. From mind-focused practice to practice and the life of holiness of both spirit and flesh. Sotezan's belief of Dharmakaya Buddha and world of Maitreya. In the center of face of one Buddhism, there is Dharmakaya Buddha. The Dharmakaya Buddha is symbolized as Ilwonsang. and the Dharmakaya Buddha Ilwalsang is the object of praise. Sotaesan explained the reason to worship Ilwalsang in the Won Buddhism as the object of praise as follows. We ensure Ilwalsang in the same way that Buddhists in the past have in sharing the Buddha's image. However, a Buddha image manifests the physical form of the Buddha, but Ilwalsang manifests the main essence of the Buddha. Next page, underline part. Ilwalsang. Take Ilwalsang as the object of praise and believe in its truth, pursue merit and happiness. If we were to specify the content of Ilwalsang, it is in fact the fourfold grace. If we were to specify the content of the fourfold grace, it is in fact all things in the universe, and there is no among the mighty things in heaven and earth or the Dharma realm of empty space that is not the Buddha. Thus, regardless of time or place, we must never neglect to maintain a respectful state of mind, and should retreat the material things, meaning things, with the same pure and mind and the free attitude we have for the Venerable Buddha. He prospected the world that all beings in the universe, heaven, earth, mighty beings, empty space, and the Dharma world are revealed as the true of Dharmakaya Buddha, and everyone possesses space and all for all of those. Sotaesan's intention to symbolize Dharmakaya Buddha into Ilwalsang and to make believe it was explained by Master Jeongsan as follows. Underline part. Grandmaster Sotaesan has established the way of Dharmakaya Buddha worship in order to unify all the object of worship. Dharmakaya Buddha is the non-manual nature of all beings in the universe and the origin nature of all Buddhas and sages. Next sentence. If we were to make a distinction, we can say that the worship of Dharmakaya Buddha is the worship of truth, and to worship the personal Buddha is to believe in the Buddha for his teaching. Next page, conclusion. Last sentence. Lastly, to express my short opinion, Won Buddhism can be said absolutely Buddhism from the whole wide angle of history, reason, and the soul. However, from narrow angle, it has some figure of a Buddhist order that pursue new Buddhist movement. Clearly to speak, it may not be considered a pure figure of Buddhism in Korea. Considering from the long history and the various dimensions of Buddhism, Won Buddhism has to be a Buddhism. I think so. Last appendix translation is 조선불교 혁신론. 혁신론 is essay on the renovation of Korean Buddhism by Sotaesan. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Now, Professor Kim will respond.
I have to profess my ignorance of the word Buddhism. I'm not the one Buddhism specialist. As you probably noticed, I am historian by training, but I have a little bit interest in Korean religion because of my good neighbor, Professor Kim Sang-il. Okay, before, since so many people have talked about, the new religion, so this is the last lecture, actually second from the last. When I look at the this order, beginning with the general lecture, then first one Thonghak, second one Jimsan, then Kim Il-bo's 정의, right interpretation of I Ching, then finally Won Buddhism. So I want to, for the sake of time, I try to be brief as possible. Okay, so let me use so I ask the first summarize what is a new religion or native religion, new or native religion.
Nation.
This one began with the 19th century to the early 20th century. This so-called new religion or native religion emerged as a reaction to Western encroachment. Okay. So first, Tongha. This one is late 19th century. Actually started 1864, but big uprising on the eve of the Sino-Soviet, Sino-Japanese War. This Tongha means East learning as opposed to Western learning. So from the title of the learning, we can find the Tongha is a opposition to the Western religion. That is a Christian religion. Okay. Then from here, second one, Jingsando. Professor Lee Kyung-won Jingsando. This was roughly about the turn of the century. Okay. He died 1909, very briefly. The third national religion is Won Buddhism. In between, I skipped it here. Kim Il-bo's Cheongyok. So these three are considered the representative of so-called new religion or native religion. So three has three in one in three. So these three are very closely related, historically related, regionally related, ideologically related. Okay, so after this movement, okay, so this is how we define the new religion. The first one, the Professor Kim talked about the Won Buddhism and Won Buddhism. The first part of his paper discussed why they call it Won Buddhism. The second part, the Won Buddhism is in a way very much similar. So in the sense that the so-called three teaching, Confucianism, Buddhism, and then Taoism. These three traditional learning we call three religions, three teaching. And then about this time, new element added, plus shamanism, plus Christianity. So in addition to the traditional three elements, or four elements, including the shamanistic element, during the 19th century, the Western religion was included. So among these three religions, you can find three elements plus shamanistic and Christian elements. So altogether, 5 elements you can find. Okay, so with this introduction, I try to ask one large historical question, then the small 3 minor questions. See, Won Buddhism, in terms of doctrine, Ilwonsang, how do you say, Il means one, one means a circle, Sang is the image. So this is a key idea of Won Buddhism. But the Professor Kim pointed out that this is nothing but Dharma Kaya. So this and this is the same thing. So I think the circle image is nothing but Dharma. Okay, in addition to this, this is a very strong element which is come from the Mahayana Buddhism during the Silla period and called it the Mahayana. Number two strong element in Korean native religion you have is Dharma and Zen. Maybe the yoga Hana, or often known as the meditation Buddhism. So Korean new religion, Korean Buddhism, these two are the recurring themes. So all of them has these two. So this idea, the three in one, one in three, this idea you can find, this is a characteristic of native religion in my judgment. Okay, with this introduction, my question is, historically, during the 7th century or 8th century Silla period, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism all came to. And then after Silla, the Korea period, post-war Korea period, at the expense of Confucianism and Taoism, Buddhism is become a state's religion. Then Joseon dynasty, religion, Joseon dynasty, Confucianism. So I think Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, then next stage is the Buddhism and the Confucianism. But here, the dynasty roughly 500 years. This one is roughly 300 years. This is a rough number. Then 19th century, the new element came, Western learning. That is a Christian religion. So this combination you can find here. But my point is during the Joseon dynasty, they had the so-called Neo-Confucianism for Korea. Neo-Confucianism usually defined in terms of Confucianism plus Buddhism plus Taoism. Again, three elements you can find. But this seems to be somewhat arbitrary. You know, even the Neo-Confucianism has a strong Buddhist element. So that what I like to point out is that when the new religion, people talk about their own religion, they tend to ignore the historical, ideological development, such as this change and this Neo-Confucian logic. Actually, you cannot separate the Confucianism from the Buddhism and vice versa. So all elements here. This tradition also you can find that even in the Silla period. Everybody talk about Chechiwan's the Nang, so according to this one, these three plus traditional, which is the shamanism. So the combination of everything. That's what you have. So from the Silla period to this day, all these three elements, continually hand down from generation to generation. But after 19th century, the three religions I mentioned, they talk their own uniqueness. So in case of one Buddhism, actually one food, when you read the scriptures, lots Buddhist element, yes, because they call it. Professor Kim talk about why they, the lengthy detailed explanation why they decide to use the term one Buddhism. But in addition to Buddhism, you find lots of Confucian elements and other elements, including Christian elements. Okay, so one wonders why they do not put their religious or intellectual development in the large historical intellectual context, or what I mean is Neo-Confucian tradition. That's large.
Okay, so over time, 15 minutes.
I'm
You
sorry.
overtime 5
Okay,
minutes.
so
Yeah.
the small question, the three questions I have. First one is, if you read the scripture, I read the most recent one, 2006. It was published altogether 467 pages. Out of which only 40 pages allocated for the discussion of Buddhism. The rest, 400 pages, something else, practice, and then plus the scripture of founder, Totesang. So I wonder why you still call Buddhism, or why you ignore the other element. The other element is perhaps more than the Buddhist element in the scripture. That's one question I have. Okay, second question is the, as I said, why the Neo-Confucian tradition is completely ignored, The Lida is almost 500 is official teaching is Neo-Confucian. So everywhere it's related. Nevertheless, not much mentioned. Also did not put in the right historical context. This is my feeling. And then in his papers, 1916, so he got the spiritual enlightenment. He didn't read any other text. Then suddenly he started reading the other books. But he has a very sophisticated person, and then he had a dialogue with the famous Zen masters. Very interesting reading. I encourage you to read it. But again, she must have learned from all this tradition. Without tradition, you cannot create anything new. So every element he talked about, or all these native religion talk about, the three old, 800, 2,000 years old elements you can find. Okay. And then the final small question. These three religions, Tonghak, Cheungsang, and then Won Buddhism, regionally it's related. It all started Jeolla province. And then at the same time, just about 10 years, 20 years apart. So, but these three religions never mention each other. As if it exists out of somewhere, out of blue. So there is no reference to it, no mention of all the other religion, although they live in some. I'm sure. Okay. So that's my point. I'm sorry, I haven't spoken English last 10 years since I retired.
네, 한꺼번에 대답 드릴 수 있을 것 같습니다. 각각에 좀 잘 하시는 분이 좀 짧게 통역을 해주시면 감사하겠습니다. 좀 해주시면 큰 질문 하나에 작은 질문 3개인데요.
I'm going to just shortly respond to his questions.
오물교의 공식적인 역사 기록에는 소트산 대종사 깨달음 전에 별다른 어떤 공부 과정이 없었다라고 기록하고 있습니다.
In our records, Sotaesan's awakening, prior to his awakening, he hadn't had any formal education.
그러나 제가 보는 관점으로는 그 지역적인 문화적인 영향도 분명히 있었을 것이고 우리가 찾아내지 못한 그런 어떤 그 행적들이 있었을 텐데 일단은 공식적인 역사 기록이 없어서 앞으로 제가 더 발굴해야 될 과제가 남아 있는 부분입니다.
But considering the context of the history of that time and the region, definitely there must be some kind of influence on him. However, there is no record, so maybe this is or our maybe future task to explore what kind of influence he might have had.
그래서 전라도에서 일어났던 동학이라든지 정상교의 영향도 분명히 있었을 것이라고 저는 확신하고 있습니다.
Definitely, I think he was influenced by the Tonghak and the Jeongsan-gyo, which was erupted at that region.
그리고 아주 명백하게 오물교 2대 종법사이신 정산께서 원래 그 주 전공 분야가 유학 전공이셨습니다.
When we consider the second, the head of the movement, his orientation was very much Confucianist.
그분의 유학 학통을 살펴볼 때 신유학의 영향이 원불교에 굉장히 영향을 미쳤음을 확인할 수 있습니다.
And then considering his education, we are able to say that definitely Neo-Confucianism influenced him.
이미 이 분야에 대해서 많이 연구가 돼 있습니다. 사실은.
Quite a good, a lot of research was done on this.
오늘의 주제가 원불교와 불교의 관계만을 초점 맞췄기 때문에 그 다른 종교와 관련된 불교를 제외한 다른 종교의 관련은 일부러 제외를 시켰음을 말씀드립니다.
Simply because today's subject title was the contrast between Buddhism and Won-Buddhism, the other part was not included in my presentation.
한국의 과거 역사 속에 그 불교, 유교, 도교 많은 영향들이 있어왔는데,
Of course, in Korea, 유불선 삼교, Confucianism and Buddhism and some Taoism and some Christian. So there was a kind of influences.
원불교의 출생 배경은 조선 시대 내내 억압받았던 불교에 대한 새로운 개혁을 바탕으로 해서 출생하게 된 종교입니다.
And then, in my opinion, the one Buddhism was a kind of reaction toward the oppression of oppressing the Buddhism during the Yi dynasty. Against that, one Buddhism, some kind of motive or attempt was out of that concern.
그래서 조선시대 말기 가장 안 좋았던 불교 상황에 대한 개선을 목적으로 하고 있었기 때문에 그 과거 한국 역사 속에 있었던 불교 어떤 찬란한 교학 전통이라든지 역사 같은 것들을 제대로 개선하고 있지는 않습니다.
So the Buddhism in the Yi dynasty was in the very low ebb. It was not really flourishing, and because of that, this attempt was to revitalize that Buddhism.
그래서 앞으로 저의 과제이고 원불교의 과제라고 한다면 불교 어떤 그 기본 전통과 관련을 맺어가는 일, 이것이 굉장히 중요한 하나의 과제이고 또한 아울러서 유교와 도교 그리고 그 주변 종교들과 어떤 관련을 살펴보는 것이 굉장히 중요한 작업이라고 생각합니다.
Because of such, my future interest and task is to re-relate with Buddhism and reconnect with our origin, of those major characteristics of Buddhism, and also to make more research of our relationship with Taoism and Confucianism and some others.
제가 바라는 소감이 있다면 그 불교와 우불교를 이렇게 나눠보려는 관점보다는 불법, 불교의 가르침, 석가모니의 가르침 안에서 불교와 우불교가 하나 됐으면 하는 그런 소망이 있습니다.
So in my really dream is to just to differentiate the Buddhism and one Buddhism, rather we become one under the teachings of the Buddha. That is my.
합쳐서 말씀드렸습니다.
수고해주신 발표자님과 또 윤 목사님께 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. Now, Professor Kyung-Seung Yang from Somun University will be introducing a study of Korean new religion, love for all beings in nature and humanity. Professor John Byron in the Process Center of the school. They are the last presenter of today's conference, so let us give them the biggest applause.
My name is Kyung-Seung Yang, Somun University, Education Theology Seminary. My topic is a study of Korean new religion, for all beings in nature, centering on education church. Korean people's strongest belief has been living in good harmony with nature. They have had thought geomancy flourished based on the theory of yin and yang, the science of divination. There are many ecological elements for the harmony of man and nature deeply within Korean thought through history. Accordingly, some religions of people and new ones start from Korea have the elements of the planetary thought for the nature. Unification Church, which was established on May 1st, 1954 from Seoul, also emphasized a planetary sort of nature as its worldview. Unification Church has various planetary thought for nature in doctrinal content of the divine principle and the unification thought, which I would study the planetary thought for universe of the one of newly rising religions in Korea, centering on those parts and hope render service to solve the critical environmental problems through the world today. Who looks on the nature, 그러니까 자연에 대한 두 가지의 관점에 대해서 잠깐 간단하게 이야기하겠습니다. The history of human civilization had been divided into two great parts, with their different sense of value and history on the subject of the ecosystem in accordance with the prescribed relationship of man and nature. Western view of nature and the humanistic thought, 서양의 대자연관과 인간 중심 사상에 대한 것과 두 번째는 동양의 흡자연적인 자연주의 사상과 앞부분 펠라그램만 읽도록 하겠습니다. The view of nature in the West has been formed to regard the nature as the means
and the instrument for human life. Therefore, to study how to manage and use the nature is the key subject of the learning, especially the view of the nature. In the West have been developed through the two cultural mainstream. Hebraism, Jewish religious thought of the ancient Israel, and Hellenism formed through the culture exchange between Mediterranean Europe culture around Greece and Rome, and Islamic culture in the Middle East. Hebraism became the root of the Christianity, while the Hellenism formed the sense of the value of the natural science. Nationalism, empiricism, and the mechanism which appear as the frontier spirit toward the nature in the West today. Hebraism, centering on the religious creed, grasped the meaning of the relationship between man and nature as the antagonistic relationship, which is not commercial relationship with nature. It is 잘안 보여가지고 in the explanation below. 좀 뒷부분은 참고해 주시고요. 그 다음에 planned resort for the nature in the Orient, 동양의 합자연적인 그 자연주의 사상입니다. Contrary to the view of the nature regarding nature as an object of the domination and the means, the Oriental regard it and object of the adaptation. It means that nature is not object to rule, but an object to adapt. Therefore, the sense of the conquest of the sense of dominion could not exist in the thought of the Orientals. They lived the nature as it was and taught themselves to be in harmony with the nature, and formed the mainstream of the civilization is nature-oriented thought, on the contrary to the man-oriented thought of the West. The Orient regarded the nature and man identical, being a state of the object, and oneself are one flesh, or cosmos, and the one self are the same one, might to realize when nature and man become one. 이 동양의 그 자연주의 사상에 대한 내용을 좀 정리드리고요. 마지막 콜라그랩에 가서 페이지 132. However, it is good things that we can trace various current going forward to the point of the contact. For example, theory of the deep ecologist of this eighth law, and the theory of the conscious reformation of the Kapla, awareness of the thinking for the name of W. Fox, and the Gaia hypothesis of J.E. Lovelock belong to this current, which I would like to introduce your so-called deep ecology. So 이 deep ecology에 대한 얘기를 잠깐 하겠습니다. Deep ecology is an idea used Ness Norwegian philosopher with the term knowledge ecology movement in 1973. In this paper written for the magazine in Inquiry, the deep ecology or deep environmentalism is connected in the change of human consciousness on the nature through the grasping the environmental program upon the sense of the value of philosophy, psychology, sociology, religion, and anthropology, while shallow environmentalism seek for the visual to meet the program of resource drain and anti-pollution movement. Let's define it the ultimate norm of self-realization and explain it to realize oneself through ecology. 마지막 3장의 마지막 심층 생태학의 기본 원리 8가지를 정리를 했습니다. 참고해 주시고요. 다음에는 이제 friendly thought of the nature in unification church, 이른바 오늘의 이제 본론에 해당이 되겠는데요. 통일교회의 이른바 만물 네오 사상, 자연 친화적인 그런 사상에 대한 정리입니다. Friendly thought of the nature in unification church, man and creature as the individual true incarnation. 한국말을 번역하기가 좀 어려워서 정리됐습니다만은 개성진리체로서의 인간과 만물 이런 의미입니다. Every existence is an individual true body which exists as the substantial object of God resembling his characteristic. Individual true body is the separated substantial object of God, the same is dual essential entities who exist as an invisible subject. We call this subject the substantial object and the individual true body. As man is an ideal substantial object of God, we call him the ideal individual truth body, while all things except man symbolic individual truth body. 그러니까 모든 만물이 이른바 이제 개성진리체로서의 인간과 만물이라고 보는 관점이라는 것이죠. 개성진리체에 대한 관점은 좀 더 이제 그 뒷부분을 참고를 해주시기 바랍니다. 다음에 두 번째, all things connected belong with dual purpose. 그러니까 모든 만물은 이중 목적을 지닌 연체다. 모든 통일교에서 보는 관점이 모든 만물은 두 가지의 목적, 이중 목적을 지닌 연체다. 라고 하는 관점입니다. According to unification principle, the purpose of existence of the universe centered one man is to return joy to God, the Creator. Every being is the connected body with a dual purpose. Every existence has both character and form. According its purpose is twofold. One purpose pertains to internal character, and the other the external form. The purpose of the internal character is for the sake of the whole. While the purpose pertaining to the external form is for the individual, in other words, the former and the later related to each other as the cause and the effect, internal and the external and the subject and object. Therefore, there cannot be any purpose of the individual from the purpose of the whole, nor any purpose of the whole that does not include the purpose of the individual. Accordingly, all the creature in the entire universe form the West complex linked together by the dual purpose. 그러니까 모든 만물은 이중 목적을 지닌 그런 연체다. 위하여 존재하는 그런 관계에 대한 관계성의 문제를 설명을 했습니다. 세 번째 챕터 3는 Understanding the heart of God. God's heart는 심정, 그러니까 심정이라는 말을 그냥 썼습니다. 이 heart가 완전한 번역은 아니라고 했어요. 그래서 Understanding the heart of God. 하나님의 심정 이해입니다. Unification Church에서 God is the being of the heart. The heart defined as the emotional impulse to feel joy when one gives love to the object is the core of the divine nature and the ultimate character of the creation. The purpose of the heart is to realize the three great blessings God gave man. 인간에게 준 3대 축복이죠. The result of the heart is joy, which comes above when the object starts to reflect the will of the subject enough according to the divine principle. God has the heart as the core of his attributes, so he was driven by the irrepressible impulse to create man for his object and the universe for the object of man. 이 하나님의 심정의 이해가 전개해야 된다 하는 그런 말씀입니다. 이게 통일교회에서 만물을 보는 관점 가운데 대단히 색다른 내용입니다. 그래서 이 부분은 제가 영어로 발표하기가 조금 어렵습니다만은 좀 참고를 해주시면 좋겠고요. 또 이렇게 한국 사람들은 그 한국 논문에 나온 내용을 좀 참고해 주시면 좋겠습니다. 그 다음에 이제 페이지 135은 on the other hand, there are many functions of the heart within God and man, but the following 10 functions are core of the heart. 심정에 대한 그 기능을 이렇게 10가지로 이렇게 쭉 정리를 해봤습니다. 참고해 주시고요. These 10 essential functions of the heart mentioned above can work harmonious and unified function through the forming intimate, complementary and interdependent relationship. However, due to the fall of man, such functions of the heart are not working properly. To develop and improve this function of the heart, man should put his heart and soul on his own initiative. 그 심정에 대한 기능을 정리를 좀 해봤고요. 다음 넥스트 페이지. True Love Movement of Unification Church, 통일교회에 의해서 주장하는 True Love Movement, 참사랑 운동입니다. The purpose of all beings in the created world is to live for the sake of others and return joy to God in the world. And the sense of value of the deep ecologists which they keep in common is the protection and preservation of all things around the world and universe where we live, as well as the realization of the egalitarianism of existence, which reflect their characteristics to the nearest agreement with the relationship of man and nature is the True Love Unification Church. Dr. Sun Myung-Gon explained the meaning of True Love as follows. 이 통일교회에서 주장하는 이 참사랑의 운동, 이게
대단히 또 하나의 독특한 운동에서 정리가 되었고요. 그 통역의 창시자이신 유 선생님께서 주장하신 그 내용도 참고를 해주시기 바랍니다. 다섯 번째는 Godism of Unification Thought, 통일 사상에서 본 하나님주의입니다. Unification Thought is the thought of the Dr. Sun Myung Moon and also an ideology for the unification movement and the women's liberation campaign started by Dr. Moon. It is often called Godism or headwind 구입 사상, headwind ideology. Godism gives emphasis to the true and the love of God, and the headwind ideology means the ideal to embrace the right wing thought and the left wing thought together within is the scope within a higher dimension. Furthermore, unification thought is the thought of God to create an ideal world on earth through the eternal love of God by the strong program of human being glory. 하나님주의에 대한 설명이죠. 다음에 여섯 번째는 understanding all things from the viewpoint of the masculinity and the femininity in harmony with each other. 피조 만물을 음양의 조화체로서 만물을 이해한다라고 하는 관점입니다. See, merchant theorist of the movement of ecology, in his book Radical Ecology in 1992, found the fundamental spirit of ecology from the Taoism in the Orient. He spoke very highly of the principle of dual collectivity with the theory of doing nothing with the nature, saying that those are the principles of man and nature, and the origin of harmony. Such view appear in the ontology of the unification thought. Explain man and all things are harmonious complex of the positivity and the negativity. It means that man, animal, and mineral exist in the multiplicity. Both the give and the take relationship of the positive and the negative as in male and female. This view can be regarded the same as Taoism, which many ecologists has given a lot of thought on. 만물에 대한 이해를 음양의 조화체로 본다. 마지막으로 the establishment of the day of all things. 통일교에서는 만물의 날을 제정해가지고 매년 기념을 하고 있다라고 하는 사실입니다. All Sun Myung Moon, who found the Unification Church, decided on the day of all things on May 1st in the 1963. After that, since March in 1994, adding a word true to the day of all things, 참 만물의 날이라고 이렇게 명칭을 인정하고 있습니다. Has been being celebrated. God have created all things to prepare the environment for man to live in and to have dominion before he actually created them. However, due to the fall of man, all creating lost the original law of creation, which made them organized until today for the true God's children to appear and rule over them. Dr. Moon had already set up the day of the parents on the March she posted in 1960 and Children's Day on the October 1st. The same year, through which unmasked the way of the true parents and the true children to become one has been opened. 이것은 통일교 교리에 대한 설명이 되겠습니다만, 그 만물의 날을 부모의 날, 만물의 날, 자녀의 날, 만물의 날을 제정해서 만물의 소중함, 귀중함을 깨닫게 하는 그런 날을 제정해서 기념하고 있다고 보입니다. The next page, the proposition for the restoration of the ecosystem. One of the urgent tasks for people in 21st century to solve together is the environmental problem. 소위 그 NIMBY, near in my backyard, 이러한 현상이 이제 니아비, near in anybody's backyard, 어떤 사람의 정원에도 안 된다. 이것이 요즘에 와서는 not on planet Earth, 지구상에는 안 된다라고 하는 니아비가 님비가 니아비에서 노프로 이렇게 표현하고 있습니다. Therefore, paying attention to the environmental problem, any state work of the politics, economic, culture, education will fall to function. There are about 5 kinds of approach to solve the worldwide environmental problem as follows. The 5 kinds are not applied separated, but in effect to supplement each other simultaneously. We can say the follows when they are explained logically. 여기 이제 그 과학 하겠습니다. 5가지의 그 에코시스템, 이른바 그 환경운동에 대한 내용을 좀 정리를 했고요. 나름대로 이제 어떤 제의하는 내용을 이제 4장에 선정했고, 마지막 컨클루전입니다. 컨클루전 두 번째 센텐스입니다. In this paper, I explain the Western view on nature and the Oriental view on the nature, which are two mainstream of the world view on nature. I chose ecology as point of the contact to link two different views which are contrary each other. Ecology is the method of the emphasize one sense to value and ideology, claiming that man himself is the primary cause of the ecological crisis. Man has basically changed his thought and attitude toward the environmental so that all the environmental problems can be solved. 여기에 이제 그 7가지 통일교에서 주장한 내용을 다시 한번 정리를 했습니다. 시간이 돼서 이상으로 마치도록 하겠습니다.